Hi and welcome to Jim's Train Tips. Righto, so we've got our space worked out where we're going to put this model railroad, so now we've got to work out a track plan to put in it. These three books here that I've had for about 5 million years are just Bibles when it comes to track plans. They're ideal for getting a track plan for even small layouts, so even if you've only got a tiny little board, you can put something on it. Here's some of those little small layouts that I spoke of, and they're quite compact. They can be quite detailed and keep you out of mischief for quite a while. And here's some other little ones that really are small modules that can form part of a larger layout that you might want to make later on. If you have got only a small board, it's worth thinking about going to one of the small scales like N. You can fit 4 times as much N on the same amount of space as you can HO. If you've got an enormous amount of room, you can think about anything up to O scale. But bear in mind you do need a big amount of room for O scale. There's a comparison chart in the back of the book that shows you just how much room you will need for all the various scales that you might want to use. But as it happens, these books go from anything from very simple right through to scenic and very complicated as well. Like it says on the cover, there's 101. So you can usually pick out something that fits the space you've got. Here's one of the more complicated ones that I would have liked to have made. Now, I went for this one here. This is the one that fitted in the garage that we had at the time, and that's just the one I decided to go with. I nearly went with this because it did appeal to me, but it wouldn't have filled up the shed. It suits what I want to do, and it fitted the space that I had. But so once you've found something that fits what you're after, the trick is to photocopy it. That's faded, of course, but never mind. And then draw it out a lot bigger so that you can start to make sense of it. And so I roughly drew it out, and you'll find that you want to change a few things as well as you go along, and that might suit what you want to do a little bit better. So once you've got it drawn out roughly like that, then you've got to fit it on. You've got to work out something like this, which is a grid layout of all the different size modules that you're going to put this layout on. So this is just part of the planning when you start to get into something a reasonable size. If you're running on a small layout, then you're only going to have 1, maybe 2 modules, and of course the task's a lot easier. So that's what happens. We draw it out, we have a bit of a fiddle with it, and then we start making the modules. Just interrupt that idiot for a minute just to explain a couple of things. When you've been doing things for 50 years, you tend to not explain the basics to people, so we'll take a step back. Now, why I photocopied the original plan here is because it's laid out on a grid, very fine lines that denote 1 foot or 300mm, depending on what uni you went to. And the reason I photocopied it out small, did this little bit, was so I could draw all over it and such like, and not make a mess of the book. And I transcribed it onto a larger piece of paper, which I drew up grids. I'll just zoom in there to represent the 300mm grid and make the layout a lot bigger, so it's a lot easier to understand when you want to modify them. When we moved on to planning on the modules, how big they were and how much room they're going to take, I expanded the grid a little bit further so it was a little bit easier to work with, and use this to work out the sizes of the actual modules to fit the layout in, and also to fit the space of the single car garage to make sure we had enough room all around the place. The reason I chose this particular track plan is because it's got a good combination of yards over here and scenic business over on this side here. So translate that up to the real thing. We're up to at this point in time, and you can see our yards over in this area here, and over in here will be a passenger facility and loco facilities down here, and over on the other side, which you can see is still well under construction, this will have a lot of scenic stuff in it. This will be mostly mountains. Most of these tracks will be covered over, and on top there'll be an overhead line that comes right up into this top corner where all the spare track is, and that'll have a little logging facility and round turntable, etc. for a narrow gauge. So it gives you a good combination of yards where you can store a lot of trains and rolling stock, and scenic for good opportunities for lots of detail. Even within yards itself, you can still have scope for lots of nice little detailed scenes, like this little lot here. Little gang huts sitting in the middle of the track there. We'll get into a bit of that sort of stuff in later episodes. That's something to bear in mind when you're working out a track plan. If you want a good combination of both worlds, something like this might be the way to go for you. The main thing to consider is fitting it into your space. Now that we're on a roll, we'll get stuck into module construction and the stuff you need to put them together, and we'll start on some of the millions of tools you're going to need for this hobby as well. So we'll see you in the next episode.